We're here. This is supposed to be 10 a.m., but I put PM by mistake. But shout out to everybody. It's gonna be a quick. The lottery job market. I mean, this is crazy right now. I'm starting to see a lot of people have issues with finding a job, mainly because a lot of people post a lot of stuff. So if anything goes wrong with your job, you know, your jobs are going to be looking at, are you going to post us if we treat you wrong, if we don't give you that promotion, we don't this, we don't that. So these jobs are looking at your social media posts. These jobs are trying to figure out, are you going to be a good candidate? Are you going to blurt the secret recipe to the Coca-Cola formula? You know, like what's going to happen if we put you in this position? Are you going to win? Or are you going to lose? You know, and a lot of people are putting too much information on social media. Calling names. The guy at my job, Bill, gets on my nerves. The manager, this. I mean, it's one thing for you to talk about your day, but stressing where you work, calling out the company's name, calling out employees, you know, even some people say, well, they don't know where I work at. Some people, I seen one video where this lady worked at FedEx. She didn't say the city she was in, but she said the state she was in. They was able to find her through some friends and coworkers, and the lady ended up getting fired. She got mad about it, but she knew it was the reaction that came from her post. Another lady, she got a job at Dunkin' Donuts. She did the little dance challenge where these, people doing the challenges where they dance at their jobs and stuff. Got fired. So, I mean, needless to say, with all that's going on, the job market is kind of scarce, and you actually got to watch yourself, man, because here today, gone tomorrow, and then most of these jobs, you know, they're on a crunch to get rid of a lot of people to inflate the numbers. Oh, we're doing well. We're hiring. A lot of people talking about the job market with Zoom, ZipRecruiter, Career Builder, all these different companies and platforms that are hiring, um, but they're not actually hiring. And like they're saying, it's like a lottery to get picked for these jobs because they have a plethora of candidates trying to get this job. I mean, take for instance, look at Publix, look at Kroger's, grocery stores that's in my area. These jobs where the guys are picking up the carts, Walmart. You would always see these young kids in high school picking up carts. Now you're seeing older men in their 50s, possibly a little going into 60 if, some situation where they still got to work or be greeters at the front door when you go into Walmart or some type of business establishment where they, saying hey to the customers, and checking receipts. I mean, that's just how crazy it is in the job market. You have guys come into a job fair, fill out for 20 jobs, 100 jobs, and you might get 3 callbacks. And it's not because you don't have a good resume most of the time, not because you have too many gaps in employment history. It's just they have so many people to pick from. So they can choose to pick the guy with no blemishes on his record. They can choose the guy that been with a company for 20 years. Shout out to Orlando Minor. These companies are not loyal. They're not going to be, have your best interest, even though they want you as an employee. They're looking at their bottom line at the end of the day, what they can do for the company. That's going to benefit them. It's not benefiting them getting the best candidate that, jumps job to job every 6 months. They have a choice of getting the best candidate they can find and, overall doing what they want as far as with that candidate to have them, hey, if we want to keep this guy for 6 months to the fiscal year, we want him seasonal. We'll just hire him and let him go after February and say, hey, he's a seasoned worker. You know, we can go into a point of having so many workers and lay them off through the budget cuts. And the jobs are in a sneaky way now. The people that make the most money within the major corporations, been there 10, 15 years tenure, they will lay you off due to performances so they can bypass the severance package deal. Going on, boss lady. They bypass the severance package deal by laying you off due to performance issues. And then they can go through your history, see how many times you've been late, how many times you've not completed assignments, anything. I mean, so in the corporate world, they have a good, strong tally of all that. Just in the regular jobs too. I mean, just like my job, I have a driving job. There's no real late for me because my route gets done, completed. So there's no really late for me. Now, my tally comes in when I'm not completing my stops on time and I have to bring stops back. That's what I get penalized for. Stuff like that. If I'm damaging the vehicles, if I'm tearing up the vehicles, that's where my tally comes into play. I had one accident here at this job. Now, if I have another accident and have accidents outside of the job, I'll be considered, uninsurable because even though if the accident's not my fault, I can potentially get to a point where I'm accident prone to where, hey, no company wants to insure me because of me getting in the accident. So I have to watch that as well. Citing that different jobs have different reasons for letting people go. The better thing that benefits them that can, ease the burden on their pockets, laying you off without having to pay anything, that's a good thing for them. So a lot of times, man, stay on your P's and Q's. You're at the job, make sure you stop these TikToks, stop this social media, if all else. If you're doing it some of the past time and you have that free moments where you can listen and do things, that's cool. It's like listen to the radio at your job. Most jobs allow it, but if it don't allow it, don't do it. Don't risk your job. I mean, I don't foresee nothing being that important. I mean, even with me, I drive, and I tell you all the time, I'm on YouTube. I'm watching budget videos while I'm driving. I'm actually to a point where Orlando Minor, I'm watching him a whole lot. The Edwards, I'm watching them. Guy, he does finance and does the market. Watching a lot of AO Nation. Watching his channel. He used to work up under Dave Ramsey. Now he has his own thing. I can't think of his name right now, but yeah, watching his channel. Just a plethora of people that talk about finance. Of course, I'm always watching Wanda Budget and Beyond. Watching Wanda, staying on top of hers with her finances and the things she talked about. Envelope stuffing. I'm gonna try that back out about the envelope stuffing, but that's pretty good for savings. I always talk about savings, life insurance, and things of that nature. But yeah, according to the job market, it's getting to a point where it's not that quite easy to get a job. They always back in the day is all about who you know, not what you know, and these things. But it's really getting to a point about manipulation in the market. They can hire who they want to hire because, like I said, they have the numbers. They can pick from 80 to 100 to 10,000 candidates if they want to, because most of the time you got so many people applying for the same position. I mean, even I was just looking at this video earlier where college graduates that go to top ranking schools, Yale, Harvard, Princeton, these people are getting laid off. And what was the whole thing that was told us? Get good grades, go to a good college, and when you graduate at the top of your class, you can have the cream of the crop of jobs starting at 100,000. This was the things that was told to most of us getting into the job market. You go to a good school, it pays off. MIT is one of the top ranking schools. You're gonna pay a lot for this school, but you're gonna always have a good job. I talked about this the other day to where most people go get a job into certain fields, and they end up, working as a clerk, as a checkout, at a company as a manager, a supervisor, because of their credits and credentials that they got from their job. It doesn't knock their position at the end because they're making money and providing for themselves and their family, but it's just most people didn't go to college for that. I went to college for, in accounting, and now I'm a manager at a bakery. That's still a good position, but it's not the position that you want to go to, that you went to school for. Cosmetology. Go work at a shop, but then sometimes the shop thing don't work out. Then you got to go and get something else. Try to get you a job. There's no shame in anything. I've worked at fast food. I've worked jobs to where when I lost my job, I sat out for a while. I did a couple of jobs, to the point to make ends meet till I found something else. But that's always the thing. I would never be ashamed of being a trash man, working at McDonald's at 43 years old, because there's a will as a way to provide for your family. And like I say, with the job market being scarce, something is better than nothing. Especially if you have a family, not working and not providing, that just says the least, going into the effects of how you're willing to, do things for the family. And, most of all, I always try to keep one in the chamber of having a side hustle. If you have a car, there's no reason why you shouldn't be making money. DoorDash, Uber, Lyft. There's all kind of positions you can do with driving a car. People who's catching a bus, there's a work shift. There's an app that you apply for jobs. You pick a shift to go do for the primitive lazy people that don't want to work a job 24/7. It's all kinds of ways of making money nowadays. On the internet, you have freelance work, Fiverr, and all that gives people who have creative mindsets to, proofread papers. They have different jobs that you can do online, reading for Audible. People who have books, they need someone, need someone to read those books. You can go on Audible and deal with those books. There's a lot of way of making money and finding jobs, but it's just the point of what would you rather yourself to do? What position would you want to put yourself in? I mean, saying the least that when it comes down to it, something is always better than nothing. Because granted, you can always change your job, but to sit there and not have no job, that's a situation that's going to be bad for you and your family. Not even just if you don't have a family, just for you. Not having any money to pay your cell phone, car insurance, the place where you stay. Even staying with your parents, you're going to need gas money. If they pay for the insurance, you're still going to need gas money for your vehicle. So there's always going to be an instant where you need money and to do stuff. So granted, you have to get to a point or a position in your life where you're going to have to, make the sacrifice, and applying for jobs. It's going to be to a point where you might have to get in the door from people people you meet, being courteous and nice to someone you never know. My kids watch this show called Darman, and the crazy part, a lot of his things are actually showing up on my YouTube sometimes, and mainly on my Facebook, because one of my sons got linked to my Facebook. But the crazy part is a lot of his shows kind of represent the kindness and the respect for people, not even just being in the open, just being generally nice to someone you meet or you haven't met before, a homeless person, but it's in the job market as well. I seen one the other day where this man was, acting as a homeless person, but had a charity that he wanted to give somebody a position for, and acting as a homeless person where these two people came. One guy was in a position, had a lot of money. He needed the job to help with his lifestyle, but he put up a front where the lady, she genuinely cared about people, but didn't have much money. And she gave the homeless guy some money after the guy who was rich stole his wallet because he's seen all the money on the inside. And it kind of shows the mentality that people are doing anything right now. So when it comes down to the job market, just protect yourselves. Stay off of social media, talking bad about companies because it's going to come back. Stick to your content that you do. If you get laid off, just say I got laid off, didn't like it, and move on. I rather, in my opinion, won't say anything about my layoff if I got laid off or something, due to the fact that when you get hired, you don't think these social media. If you give an email, they can just do a quick search of your name, pull up a couple of emails or something that's referenced to you by social media accounts, and then go from there. Your social media, all your social medias are linked to an email, whether it be the one you hide and nobody knows. If your name pops up on that account by just a quick Google search, you don't even have to put all the information to go in a deep search. Just a basic Google search by your name and go from there. Because you got to understand, these companies hire, they want the best candidate they got. So out of 10,000 candidates for 5 positions, they can go through as many candidates as they want. The candidate that, just have a long history at a job, that shows good standing with a company. Candidates that, give them a call to the company and never been late, always been on time. They just kind of got caught up in that layoff. Or a candidate that's never been fired. What would you do different from the last job so you won't get fired? They ask these type of things. All these things into play with, getting a new job. Or sometimes you might have to start a new career. One of my good friends at this job worked in IT, and now he's doing a delivery job. The first time he got here, killed. He was kind of on the heavy side, and this is an active job, and someone that stays in the office all day, going out, sweating, it plays a big part on him. So that kind of took a toll for him to the point where he had to say, man, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. And that plays a big part in your everyday moving around, things of that nature. So when it came down to it, he had to lose the weight. He had to, work out. He got the weight down, and screen years to the point where he had to start learning how to build his muscles. Because you got to understand, Tindy's not using certain muscles all the time. If you're not just a person that generally works out, if you have a 9 to 5 where you sit at a desk, you're not using certain muscles, and over time, those muscles are not as strong as the people who, lift every day. I know guys that are 65 that can still bench press and work just as good as these young guys. They feel a little pain, but hey, they doing it so much as a repetition. So just be mindful of the things that you post online. Be mindful of the job market, seeing what's out there, and trying to pick the best thing to suit you. And overall, sometimes you might have to change your career. And change might be for the best sometimes. Because, if that job market is not opening up for you, try another market, something that's going to benefit you, make a little more money. You know how many people got into trucking during a downturn of 19? Like getting the CDLs is just basically going to a school, getting the training property, going there, take those hours seriously about driving, because you got to understand, anybody driving any kind of truck, you got a lot of people's lives in your hands. So you have to be mindful of the people around you, always checking your mirrors, always making sure you're putting yourself first by taking care of you and others around you. So, that's a benefit when you're doing this situation. In any job, you have to, watch yourself and watch your surroundings. But with this one, you have a truck that can, possibly kill about 7 people driving too fast, or, just making subtle mistakes. So you have to keep that in mind when you're in a position like this, or even changing jobs, knowing what you're dealing with. A lot of times people get in positions, don't know it. I mean, hey, that's something new to you. The training might didn't work out, or it's just something that probably didn't fit you. But it's always a good thing to try something, so at least you can, get your feet off the ground. Try to, get in a position to win, because not having no money come through, not paying the bills keep coming. No matter what, the bills keep up. So getting to a point to where you have some money, some revenue, learning how to reinvent yourself, changing up your resume, going through a temp, uh, just trying some things out that can benefit you short term to get to the long term. You know, Amazon, they have apps, Amazon Flex, where you don't have to work as a carrier directly through Amazon. Amazon Flex is almost the same preference to where you deliver packages, sometimes for a greater profit than working directly through Amazon. You know, so there's other ways around to making money if you don't want that full 9 to 5. Like I say, just knowing that in this market right now, it's sort of a lottery pick. You have 10,000 people there, just like prime example with the lottery. Every time that lottery drops, you got over at least a million plus people buying a lottery ticket. At random, you got what, almost close to what, a half a million combinations that could possibly pick that one number. So out of a million people, or even 10 million people, you have a half a million number, probably orders of ways that you can, hit that power. You know, same with the Cash for Fantasy Five. The numbers are less, but at the same time, hey, the consistency to win, those numbers are still there. The different combinations, same as a job market. Getting out here looking for a job, hey, if all these people applying, it's only going to be one winner. So just keep that in mind when you're doing these jobs. Until then, I'm going to jump off. This is supposed to be a short one. That being said, I always say, we're here, we go.